Dissolve. Written by Sijif. Read by Arashi. As Hubert waited backstage, his heart started to pound. Not because he was nervous to do his set at the small, dumpy club. The music always came easy, anyways. But because he knew he was there. It was not impossible to notice, every time he was there, which seemed to be all the fucking time. He stood out like a sore thumb. Everyone else, literally everyone else, was wearing some shade of black, usually in the form of a t-shirt stenciled with an obscure band name. He, however, always dressed in some combination of white, khaki, soft blue, hell, even fucking salmon. Often one article of his clothing was either checkered or had some ridiculous pattern that you would need to squint to even know what it was, like whales or frogs or martini glasses. And if that wasn't ostentatious enough, his perfectly wavy hair was a tangerine you just had to bite into, his eyes the color to match. Perhaps Hubert had never thought he'd be attracted to this kind of man, but fuck if he wasn't gorgeous. Stunning, really. "What's wrong, Hubert? Is your admirer here?" Edelgard teased in her all-too-knowing voice that made it not sound like teasing at all. Her pale hair, in it's so a phase, but it's actually in right now, side ponytail contrasted against her black jumper and black denim jacket. But what really popped were her red tights and black and red striped hand warmers. "He is not Hubert sneered, hating how it was so easy for Edelgard to get a rise out of him when it came to him. Ignoring her, he looked down at his own outfit, which was, well, a black t-shirt stenciled with some obscure band name. The band on his shirt was Hades Omega, if it mattered, although Hubert surmised it didn't. In fact, other than some bits of silver that stuck out here and there, like his dog collar, his lip ring, and his layered pant chains, his outfit was entirely black. It's a wonder that he could even notice Hubert at all. "You ready?" Edelgard asked as their band, the Black Eagles, was announced. Nodding, Hubert took the stage with his bass guitar in hand, heading to the microphone. He was really just the lead singer, by necessity, since he was the only one of them who could actually sing worth a damn, but he supposed it worked out fine since he wrote all their songs anyway. Edelgard took her place at the keyboard, the master of the synthetic sounds that made their music so haunting, while Caspar practically launched himself at the drums. Their lead guitarist was Petra, who looked hot AF, if you knew the lingo, in her cut-out black leather dress and tribal-style purple updo. And, finally, their manager, Linhart, who was probably in his van sleeping. He only got the position of manager because he was Caspar's boyfriend, and because no one wanted to do it, including Linhart. Once Hubert got on stage, though, he seemed to only notice him. Mr. Model. Okay, so Hubert was probably stereotyping, but what of it? But this time, Hubert refused to make direct eye contact. Fuck, he made direct eye contact. He dissolved. Their set had been a good one, Hubert supposed. The crowd had seemed to enjoy their new song at least. Mr. Model enjoyed it too, which, well, was important, even though Hubert didn't want to admit that. Those who slither in the dark came on stage next, and since Hubert despised both their band and their music alike, it seemed like the perfect time for him and Edelgard to go out for a smoke. Hubert's arm brushed Mr. Model's as he passed him. It was completely on accident. "You're getting bolder," Edelgard noted as he lit her cigarette, having to flick his lighter several times before getting the flame to hold in the wind. "Would you shut the fuck up?" he murmured, pulling a puff of sweet nicotine he so desperately needed. Once Edelgard had her fill of ribbing him, they fell into easy conversation, the way people who'd been friends since the age of 10 often do. "And can you believe their song Zaharas?" Edelgard chuckled, making fun of those who slither in the dark was one of their favorite pastimes, as it were. "It's a mashup of different babies crying. Do they really think?" The sound of a heavy metal door dragging against the floor interrupted her, and as the steel door to the club opened, Hubert's cigarette fell right out of his hand into the asphalt. It was Mr. Model, in the flesh. Quickly, Hubert stepped on his cigarette and twisted his foot, as if he'd absolutely meant to put it out. "Oh, hi. I was looking for you." Hubert just blinked at him. This was the first time, in all the many times Mr. Model had come to their show, that he had attempted to talk to him. "I mean, both of you," Ferdinand quickly covered, turning to Edelgard. Her striped hand-warmer ended up over her mouth to stifle whatever sound was going to come out of it. "Were you now?" she wondered. And knowing how fucking annoying it was to be teased by Elle, Hubert almost felt bad for the poor man. "Well, perhaps you can tell us your name." "Ah, yes, I am Ferdinand von Eyre." Of course he introduced himself like that. in the most absurd way possible. For a moment, Hubert imagined telling people, "I am Hubert von Vestra," as if that were a completely normal thing to do. Still, Hubert couldn't deny that the name suited him, although he supposed that when you were that attractive, everything suited you. "Well, I'm Edelgard," she said, "and this is Hubert." Apparently, Hubert still didn't have the balls to say anything. Not a damn thing. "Ah, I know." Ferdinand looked down at the asphalt, and when he seemed to notice that Hubert's discarded cigarette was practically fresh, Hubert hurriedly covered it with his steel-toe boot. "Actually, I'm a big fan of your band," Ferdinand continued. "I came out here to ask where I might find the CD. I especially love that new song you played today, Dissolve." If Hubert hadn't been panicking before, he was, then now would have been a perfect time to start. Flames. He'd known the lyrics were too obvious, that Mr. Model would realize the song was about him, or, more specifically, about all of Hubert's pathetic and pitiful longing. "Yeah, we don't really do merch," Hubert finally spoke. "You know, taxes." Edelgard's hand flew to the back of her mouth, and Hubert wished he had something sharp to stab himself in the neck with. Taxes? What the fuck did that even mean? Ferdinand admitted a polite, "Ah," while Hubert struggled to light another cigarette. Click, 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 click. "Oh, fuck off, you fucking wind." Ever the gentleman, apparently, Ferdinand cupped his hands around the flame to block the wind. The only thing keeping Hubert from losing his fucking shit entirely was his equally potent annoyance at Edelgard, who looked like she was about to eat her stupid hand-warmer. "Thanks," Hubert mumbled. "Actually, I might have an extra demo in my bag," Edelgard noted, putting out her cigarette. "How lucky," Hubert deadpanned, giving her a look that said, "Don't you fucking dare." "Oh, I fucking dare," her returned look communicated. "I'll go grab it. Be right back." No. Yes. No. Yes. And that was the extent of the conversation they managed to have with their eyes before she was gone, ever so fucking helpful as always. "So, Ferdinand, well, he might as well make the best of a humiliating situation, He took another drag of his cigarette. "What is it that you do? Are you a model or something?" One of Ferdinand's eyebrows arched up in the most haughtily way. "Actually, I am an accountant." Another cigarette almost fell to the ground, nearly slipping out of Hubert's mouth as his jaw fell slack. "Really?" No." Ferdinand chuckled sheepishly. "I was just jesting. I am a model." Hubert's jaw worked for a moment before he belted out an unexpected laugh. "Funny." Ferdinand tucked a strand of hair behind his ear. "Thank you." Still, it was a bit ironic, in the sense that it wasn't ironic at all, that Ferdinand actually was a model. Hell, half the crowd in the club wanted to fuck him, even the ones who looked at him like he was some kind of peacock trapped in a hyena exhibit. "And what brings you here, to this fine establishment?" Hubert inquired, keeping the conversation going. "Well, you, I suppose." Hubert had seen many movies where an explosion caused the character's ears to ring, but this was the first time he'd experienced such a sound himself. But Ferdinand's confession was just that, an explosion, and everything following that. Everything was strangely silent other than the faint ringing in Hubert's ears. But then he blinked, and the shitty timbre of those who slither in the dark returned to normal tempo, although, fortunately, still muffled by the steel door. "Oh, please, I did not mean to creep you out," Ferdinand moaned, and Hubert almost told him that it was impossible, for he was the creep. I did not mean you specifically, of course," Ferdinand rambled. "I just meant, your band." Squinting his eyes, Hubert flicked some of the ash from his cigarette. Was Ferdinand trying to cover for himself because he was embarrassed? Or was he trying to make it clear that he wasn't here for Hubert, after Hubert's reaction gave him serial killer vibes? "Wow, your friend sure is taking a while," Ferdinand noted, looking longingly at the door. "Yeah, hate to break it to you, but she's not coming back. I bet she has her tongue halfway down the bartender's throat by now." "Dorothea?" Hubert nodded. I am surprised. I thought that you and Edelgard might be, well, an item." An item? What the fuck century was this guy from? And why was he so damn adorable every time he said something so absurd? "Tell me, Ferdinand," Hubert grumbled, his hands drifting across his pant chains. "What about either of our looks screams straight to you?" Ferdinand's mouth formed into the cutest little O, the perfect shape for Hubert to just stick his tongue in. He didn't. Before he started to laugh. The sound was sweet, on a scale from 10 to those who slither in, and Hubert came to the obviously dispassionate conclusion that it might be nice to hear it again. I suppose I am a bit fish out of water here, you think? Speaking of liquids, Hubert segued, cringing as he heard his own words. He took another drag of his cigarette, as if he could bury them in the smoke. I'm sure at least 50 people have asked you tonight already, but might I buy you a drink? Ferdinand beamed at him, and Hubert's cigarette fell to the asphalt once again. I would very much like that. Luckily, by the time they returned inside, the horrible screeching of those who slither in the dark had stopped. Their set ended. Walking towards the bar, Hubert had a myriad of ridiculous thoughts ranging from, should I put my hand on the small of his back, to, should I pull out his bar stool? Never had he had the urge to do anything so stupid before, but he imagined those were the things that Ferdinand might like. Perhaps Hubert's next song should be called Lust is Brain Damage. What are you and your friend having, Hubie? Dorothea asked as they sat. I'll have a shot of whiskey and... I will have the same. Hubert did a double take, barely noticing as Dorothea left to get their drinks. You've had whiskey before, right, Ferdinand? Of course. What do you take me for? The way Ferdinand's brows drew together in annoyance was absolutely enchanting, and Hubert was going to have to make a note to provoke him into such a reaction again. Even so, when the shots arrived, Ferdinand stared at it like it might be poison, and Hubert forced himself to confine a laugh to a snort. As if he were daring Ferdinand, Hubert raised his shot glass, and his eyebrows too good for measure. Down the hatch. Down the hatch, Ferdinand repeated, although it seemed like he was psyching himself up. They both chugged their drinks, and, for a brief moment, it seemed like everything would be fine. Then Ferdinand's eyes bulged, and only a moment later he was coughing. Fuck, are you all right? Not knowing what else to do, Hubert started whacking Ferdinand on the back, as if he were burping a child. Oh, heavens! Hubert! Ferdinand gasped through his coughs, swatting Hubert's arms away. That was truly fucking terrible. Hubert didn't know what shocked him more, Ferdinand's use of the word fucking, within the same phrase as the word heavens, or the way he leaned into Hubert's side, giggling. And it was all so damn amusing and adorable that Hubert was laughing right along with him, letting his head dip against Ferdinand's for the briefest of moments. All right, Ferdinand, he tried again, cleaning the traces of his leftover merriment away with his throat. What do you want to drink? For real this time. Ferdinand bit his lip. Come now, if you have the courage to walk into N Bar wearing salmon gingham, then you surely have the courage to order the drink you like. Even still, Ferdinand's face scrunched. Oh, for fuck's sake, there's no need for such dramatics. All right, Ferdinand finally agreed. I would like an appletini. The silence spanned 4 breaths. Okay, I was wrong. That's a war crime, probably. The two burst into laughter again, leaning into each other once more, and as the mirth gave Hubert a better high than any drug he'd been stupid enough to try in his lifetime, he couldn't help but notice how fucking great Ferdinand smelled. And to the onlookers at the bar, these two who seemed so in sync couldn't make a stranger pair. You boys seem like you're having entirely too much fun, Dorothea noted as she sidled back over, sharing a look with Edelgard. Can I get you something else? 2 appletinis, please, Hubert ordered. Hubert wasn't sure who was more shocked, Dorothea or Ferdinand, and somewhere across the bar, Edelgard's laughter refused to be silenced by a pair of well-worn hand-warmers. Coming right up, Dorothea sing-songed, leaving to make their drinks. Hubert, you do not have to... Hey, fair is fair. You drank a shot of whiskey, and I'm not about to let that go unreciprocated. The least I can do is have an... He cleared his throat. Appletini. Did the word really have to be so fucking offensive? Somewhere inside of him, his 15-year-old self was giving him the finger. But then again, his 15-year-old self had never had the chance to get laid by Ferdinand von Eyre. Their appletinis arrived, and Hubert cajoled Ferdinand to a table, away from the prying eyes of Edelgard and Dorothea, or, well, at least no longer right in front of them. Taking a deep breath as he watched Ferdinand watch him intently, Hubert took a sip of the drink. Fuck. That bad? Ferdinand asked, the most adorable wince on his face that could probably just be kissed completely away. No, I wish it was... Shit. It's actually fucking delicious. There it was, Ferdinand's mouth in that little O again. But Hubert didn't have enough alcohol in him yet to have the courage to stick his tongue into it. But they laughed again, and Hubert wondered if, for a painful moment, this might be what being in love felt like. So, honestly, Ferdinand, why are you so interested in me? Hubert wondered, leaning back in his chair. Trying to stick it to one of your parents? Or an ex-boyfriend, perhaps? No, Ferdinand shifted. Actually, I've never had a boyfriend. Oh, don't tell me you're a virgin, because I won't fucking believe you. Surely enough people have thrown themselves at your dick for it to have landed in something, even by accident. Pink had never been an appealing color to Hubert, until Ferdinand's cheeks turned the most adorable shade of it. I am not a virgin, he confirmed, but I have never been with a man before. Hubert blinked. Several times. All right, he said carefully, not wanting to apply any pressure. He couldn't tell what Ferdinand was thinking, except that he was frustrated. And that was just as well, because Hubert was also fucking frustrated. You know, Hubert, I thought that, as a songwriter, you might be better with subtext. Hubert narrowed his eyes. The fuck's that supposed to mean? It means I wish you did not make me spell everything out. Ferdinand took a sip of his appletini, the daintiest form of liquid courage, and Hubert would have laughed if his dick wasn't threatening to combust at any moment now. I have never been with a man. Ferdinand leaned forward. But I want to be with you. Hubert's hands reached into his pocket, his eyes never leaving Ferdinand's as he grabbed his carton of cigarettes. It wasn't until he put one in his mouth that he remembered he was inside and couldn't smoke. Well, fuck. The cigarette fell to the table. Why, Ferdinand von Eyre, Hubert drawled, leaning in until their faces were impossibly close. Am I your gay awakening? Ferdinand blushed, the apples of his cheeks as inviting and forbidden as his wretched appletini. I do not know what you are. All I know is I was dragged here one night against my will, and then I saw you, and I have been thinking of you ever since. Okay. Ferdinand was laying it on a little thick now. Surely at any moment Hubert would find out he was on some reality TV show where a gorgeous gingham-wearing prep seduces a surly, maybe a 5 if the lighting is right, goth. He wouldn't possibly be called prepped or... I am sorry, Ferdinand sputtered, and only then did Hubert realize that while his brain was absolutely shutting the fuck down, Ferdinand had interpreted his silence as rejection. You must think me so very lame, especially compared to... Dissolve was about you, Hubert blurted out, and hope revived the flame within Ferdinand's eyes. The shadows evade the light, to preserve it from destruction. But when I twist with all these lies, the mire still dissolves me. Ferdinand's brow furrowed. I am not sure I Grabbing Ferdinand's jaw, Hubert pulled him close until their foreheads were touching. It means I keep denying how much I yearn for you, because it's fucking destroying me. Oh. But Ferdinand's realization almost sounded like a moan, and Hubert's eyes fluttered closed. His hand released Ferdinand's jaw, lightly banging against the table as a clenched fist, and Hubert wondered how much more of this he could take. Well then, perhaps you would like to kiss me? The way Ferdinand's question was still tinged with uncertainty made Hubert chuckle, as if he didn't admit how pathetically he burned for the man. Yes, perhaps I would. Their lips bridged the gap between them, and Hubert almost expected Ferdinand to kiss him as chastely as if they were at one of those creepy St. Saros camps. But an apple and whiskey-laden tongue eagerly pressed against his lips, circling around his lip ring, and tasting so fucking good that Hubert drew it into his mouth without hesitation. In that moment, Hubert finally understood every pop song he'd ever despised, suddenly wanting to wax poetic about the way his eyes exploded into stars. His entire life had led up to this moment, to making out with Ferdinand von Eyre in a seedy club, the kind of man Hubert would never look at because he would have never thought to. But now the world was only Ferdinand, as earnest and tempting and sweet as the appletini that soaked his lips. Dazed, Hubert pulled away, his long lashes fluttering up and down in their own rhythm, their own silly song. Every time they were more open than not, his heart syncopated reality at the sight of the beautiful man before him, and fuck how the yearning of having him was somehow worse than the yearning of not. Was that all right? Ferdinand asked, as if Hubert had not just taken another sip of his stupid appletini, and had not had the most earth-shattering kiss of his fucking life. And Ferdinand was certainly an enigma, at least both confident enough to be bold, while at the same time so desperately requiring validation for it. I know it must be strange for you, he continued, that I am not your type. Ferdinand, Hubert breathed, forcing himself down from euphoria to click back into report, like when segueing on stage from a ballad to synth rock. Have you seen yourself? I am rather certain you're everyone's type. Their eyes locked, and it might be the most ridiculous time for the thought to occur to him, but Hubert was suddenly very grateful that he was wearing eyeliner. "Then take me all, my essence stripped," Ferdinand hummed, "the dark spike through my lungs, now the only thing I draw breath for." It took him a moment to realize that Ferdinand was quoting Hubert's own lyrics to him, and perhaps it was conceited, but the increasingly pressing urge to fuck this man senseless suddenly became unbearable. Hand shaking, he put his cigarette back into his mouth, lighting it despite being indoors because he might just combust otherwise. "So," Hubert murmured as the nicotine calmed his nerves, "any interest in coming to my place?" Ferdinand tucked a strand of hair behind his ear, and it felt so fucking surreal, as if Hubert had just asked him to prom. "All right. And you're sure you're not just using me as some kind of rebellion against your parents? You know what? Fuck it. It doesn't even bother me." It was meant to be a joke, and it had the intended effect, Ferdinand giggling again into his side, all attention, except for the sexual variety, evaporating in an instant. And fuck everything. Honestly, fuck everything, because another song was starting to take shape in Hubert's consciousness. This time, a love song, moored in the delicate chords of laughter.